I'd just like to ask, just for the sake of our listeners and our viewers, that you just play the first 10 measures.
Okay.
And now, Joan, so you feel like you were just playing this at a level that's comfortable for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we leave it that way? And maybe you can experiment and maybe give a little more or give it a little less at times.
Okay.
And maybe just to give our listeners a chance to give us some feedback on what kind of balance they like.
Okay. So I'll play same place I did before.
Let's do a spot where the harp has the melody and the flute is accompanying, and there's a couple of spots like that where the flute is rather busy, and so the point would be that we would like you listeners to be paying attention to the harp, even though the flute might tend to distract you. So, for example, a spot would be bar 39.
39.
Bar 39. Oh, yes.
So the question here is, did everybody pay attention to the harp? That's what you're supposed to do. One of the other questions that I have as a composer, there's a slow part in the middle. It's rather static. A few harp chords, a few flute interjections. And the question in my mind as a composer is does this go on too long? Am I losing you listeners by stretching this music out too much? So I'd like to experiment with it a little bit right now. And first of all, let's just play it as it's written. So this will be the long version. And so we would start in 48, and we could stop at the end of 62. Okay, now we experimented before in rehearsal, so let's try those two experiments. First of all, we're going to eliminate 4 measures. We're going to shorten this passage by 4 measures. Now we're going to play the same passage, but this time we only are going to leave out 2 beats. So this is just a tiny adjustment, which may be even hard to detect.
Down beat you wanted me to play.
Okay. Well, I think we still get the point, and we look forward to maybe getting some feedback from folks about whether this is too long or it's okay with the long version. Now, here's something that I wanted to ask you as a rehearsal experiment. And that is these harp chords. Now, I wrote these fairly dense chords when the harp is playing by itself as a way to get the harp to sound more discordant than it usually does, because the harp is known for being pretty, and so I think what I'd like to ask you, Anne, is to see about let's making these chords less pretty, and you might, for example, more pointed, I don't know, closer to the soundboard, maybe, whatever you would suggest. Because I have, for example, I marked the mezzo piano, but maybe that's too timid. But just maybe,
okay.
I think just try the harp sounds. We maybe don't need the flute yet.
Okay.
I like that. I think that's going in the right direction. Now, this came up before. You had assumed I had wanted them dampened because of the previous bar, but then I said, nah, but let's try dampening them. I'll just let you decide to what extent you should dampen them.
Okay.
Now try kind of medium. Let them be a little longer, but with a distinct cutoff.
Now that time I also let the bass notes ring.
Right, right. Well, maybe our viewers and listeners will have give us some feedback on that. And I think for myself, I think we're kind of still searching for the right thing, but we've got time. That's.
Well, you know what would help me is that aside from my own feeling from the notes, when I look at the notes, when I hear them together with Jones, you don't give us any sort of mood indication for the movement. And I figured that was part of what you wanted to leave up to us, but there are lots of different ways to interpret it, and I sort of feel like with a direction to go in, perhaps I could move more in one direction and feel a little bit less experimental and hesitant.
Right. Well, I guess my feeling listening to you play, first of all, I basically like it, and it sounds the way it's supposed to sound. I mean, just in general terms. And I would say just it could be a little more dramatic. I mean, it's an introspective movement. I mean, there's nothing terribly wild about it. It's introspective. However, I think it could have a little more dramatic intensity at times. And this could be done occasionally with a little more attack, or occasionally a little more sound or more dynamics. For example, that the last time you tried the very beginning and you put more swell, you know, you followed the line of the flute with more swells. I thought that was a good thing to do.
I liked it too.
Right, so that's the kind of thing, maybe we need more crescendi in the music, and we
Or
could
even
add
a
some-
direction to be more espressivo or something, although
Yeah.
that can lead people astray too. But
Right, well,
and of course you've put in very little in terms of actual dynamic markings. I mean, they're sort of
Right.
minimal, so you think, well, all right, I clearly have a melody, and I see that the flute is piano. Is my melody just prominent, or is it, you know, punch him in the face?
yes, okay, right. Oh, I think my reaction to our rehearsal is that I should really put a forte in the harp part when you have the tune. It should be pretty
Well, you know, I
defined.
started with that when I was practicing, and then as we played it together, I became less convinced of that, and thought, well, maybe I could make the whole thing more lyrical, but that's clearly not what you had in mind.
Well,
I mean, not that it should be not lyrical.
yeah, it's lyrical, but it could just be a little more forthright at times.
That's
So,
not a
okay,
problem.
so we can put that. We can change the score. Okay. These are the main issues that I have been concerned with. Is there anything else that either of you would like to experiment with, or questions you might have about the score?
I, myself personally, need to work out the breaths, so they make a little more sense. I breathed 3 different ways at the end of the last segment that we did when we offered all the various options, and I think what I like best is a longer phrase. You know, starting at measure 16, going through 64. So I need to spend some time to work out some of these places where, you know, it is a very beautiful, lyrical, poignant melody, and if it was all phrased together, I think it would be even more so. It sort of, there's a drama in not taking a breath where it's expected, and sometimes that kind of drama can be really
Yeah, well, I'm
Make
in
its own
favor of
point.
that. I mean, do you feel, do you wish I had put in the breath marks in the
No.
score?
No.
Okay.
because you can kind of intuit it, I think. But yeah, on the alto flute, the breath control is a different issue. So just a little more pre-planning on my part, and then I will give 3 different scenarios for that
Yeah.
phrase.